meeting. Monday, November 2nd, and it's 6:36. Our first order of business is please rise for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, with that, we will have a roll call. Start with David, are you there?
I am here, yep.
Okay, Jeff? Here. Scott?
Here.
Yeah.
Here.
Ryan? Here. We have Kirk here? Chris not here. Howard Thursby's here too. Okay. With that, was the meeting properly notified?
Yes, it was.
Okay. With that, we'll go to our first order of business, which is comments from board members and superintendent. You want to start, Tim?
Well, yeah, we have special guests here, John and Amy Hugh, and this was supposed to happen last day of school at recognition retirement banquet, but COVID prevented that from happening and kind of been just holding out, waiting to see if we could do this in person. But we can't do it on a large scale, but we certainly can on a smaller scale for our board member who has retired after 15 years of dedicated service. So I guess I would just like to say a few comments about John and his service. John, I've known you 7+ years. The very first time I interviewed and sat down at the time was JJ's for lunch during our break and went through a whole day of interview, but that was the first time we met. And I can say over that time, whatever you do with full passion, full effort, full commitment, and certainly worked most closely with you as a school board member, but always purposeful, always aligned to vision, mission, beliefs, commitments. And then personally, you just always had a well-timed communication or words of encouragement and support that I'm very grateful for. You were very purposeful with that, and it's very appreciated, personally and professionally. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. John? Known you since the election, and you got on, I think it was about 2005? And been a joy to have you here. And I guess this is a small token of your hard work over the years. I guess to recognize some of the stuff that you've been involved with. You've been involved with choosing 2 superintendents, helping us through at least 2 referenda. Hard to forget the hard work and effort that you put in when we had the school fire and you were ramrodding the volunteers at Girl Scout camp. With that, never forget that one. That one was a huge effort. The things that you've done since then. Working with the teachers in the Wage and Benefit Committee, keeping good relations, keeping us in touch with the community, and all the efforts that you did for the school. So I want to recognize that, truly appreciate it, and appreciated your work as a colleague and your continued efforts in church. You decided to dedicate time for it, and I appreciate your friendship. So
thanks, Art. Means a lot.
Stay.
Amy wants a picture, so
Okay.
we'll break social distance protocols for just less than 15 minutes.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
A 15-year letter winner.
15-year letter winner.
Most people get it in 2 or 3
You know,
I
Joe-
think I'm the only one in the house without one now.
Well, I think Joe will remind me of the fact that it took me 15 to get one. And he actually got one. Tim, you actually asked me if I would say a few words.
I'd
So
be disappointed if you didn't share a few
Well,
words.
it's kind of a funny you should ask moment. Because the work I'm doing right now is we're focusing on how are we engaging youth in mission and purpose in life. And so one of the teachings that we espouse is hope in action. So I've been out doing some research, and I do use the internet. And I was Googling hope in action, just that phrase to see. There were lots of hits, and then I start reading, and I came across an article, and I'll leave it with you, Tim. It's by a person named Mark Schmidt. I don't know Mark from a stick in the grass, but Mark Smith went on to write an article about what is education. The definition and discussion is published as infed.org, which is a education organization and blog. And it was interesting in his assessment of education, some things that really stuck out to me. And the one that's probably most relevant to tonight is education cultivates hopeful environments and relationships for learning. And, you know, there's so many things that we can get caught in schooling, which is the widgets, but are we really always focused on education, which is about the students that are with us in the moment, in the present, about right now? And one thing that I've always admired about St. Croix Central is that most often, I believe it's the latter, that this board has always looked for ways to create hope in action, to create moments where the relationship drives the relevance, which leads to the rigor. And how many discussions have we had over the many, many years about let's not get trapped in the schooling. Let's look at what education really is. But to do that, we need educators. And so I just like to continue to foot stomp a little bit on how important it is, I believe, for this district to invest not only in the physical assets that we need, but more importantly, in the human resources that we need. And that's every teacher, that's every para, that's every cook, it's every bus driver that makes a difference to bring that education to real life, to meaningful relationship for our students every day. A friend of mine from when I marched Drum and Bugle Corps many, many years ago in the middle 70s went on to teach, and she's an educator in the San Diego School District, where she teaches ESL education, or English as a second language. And her classrooms are about 95% immigrant population. Last night on Facebook, she posted that she just had received a letter from one of her students from 20 years ago. And at first she thought, oh no, what happened? And even in this compassionate heart of who Anna O'Neill Bonatti is, her first thought was, oh no, what happened? To turn the corner, that he wanted to write a letter to her and let her know that he has now earned his master's degree. And that the first person he thought of was the teacher that helped him learn the language in the country that he is now a success within. And so if you think about hope in action, even in our greatest times, we can have that moment of failure and say, oh no, what happened? And think about the worst. I would just encourage us that we always think about what is the best for our students, what is the best for our community, and not just invest in the physical assets we need, but more importantly, invest in the people that really bring that hope into action every single day. So it's been a joy, an absolute joy serving 15 years with most of you. I admire those that continue the journey of this board, and I wish you nothing but the very best as you go forward. I would be remiss if I didn't recognize Amy here with me tonight, standing by my side every single moment of the journey. And it's never a journey of one, it's a journey of many. And Amy was the one that kept the house going on those nights when board meetings started too early and went too late. When community came to her and said, what's your husband thinking? She She says, I'm wondering the same thing. You go ask him. And then she found out it was about a board matter. And so then it made even more sense to come and see me. But Amy, you've stood by my side every moment of this journey. So why don't we share that letter together? Now you have one too. So
Perfect.
thank you, everyone.
Thank
This
you,
is
John.
your
It's very strengthened.
Thank you, Amy.
Yeah.
Oh, you too, John.
Any other words?
Thanks, Joe. Nice run, thanks. Fun doing it together.
It was a joy.
Are there any other comments from the board of superintendent? Any other matter?
And I even started wearing socks again. John accused me one meeting that I seemed more interested in the lint in my socks than what was going on at the board meeting. I said, well, that's because the things they're talking about at the board meeting aren't the right things. He said, well, let's change it then. And that's when we really started the strategic stuff, and did that mission and vision stuff. That's good stuff.
And to be fair, it was nice lint.
Okay. With that, then we will move on to the next item. We don't have any other scheduled presentations by guests or staff at this time. Move on to the consent agenda, which consists of approval of the monthly bills. We have no resignations or retirements. We have no approval of contract modifications or appointments at this time. So with that, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move approval.
Second.
The motion, Scott, second, Deanne. Approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next item on the agenda is the key work of school boards, discussion of the future district needs and priorities. We finished up our first community meeting tonight. I think there were a lot of ideas that we presented. There were a lot of ideas presented from our community members involved. A lot of it right now, the biggest request that we're looking for right now from them involves the collection of data. A lot of that data we have, so we need to get that put together for the next meeting. And go from there. We have other comments, let's start the meeting tonight.
The only one that I would ask is if we want to just ask them one more time, maybe prior to the meeting, to think if there's anything, because everything kind of steered around those 5 ideas. So everything was kind of centered around that. We didn't really get anything that was outside of it. So just a reminder to them that that wasn't the end all be all of the list. And sometimes that kind of like your first meeting, that's what you get, and maybe the next, it'll be organic and it'll happen on its own, but maybe be intentional, asking for some of those prior, if we could.
I was thinking of a data library, when you do business deals, you'll have a library and we can start putting things in, like the
Population.
population study, some of those things. Just go to a
Share
place,
folder, Padlet.
yeah, that people can see.
And I would say that we should distill those down to a 1 page on some of that stuff, like the, if we know a top line number for getting 110%. If we don't want to share, we can put everything in the library, but the population study should basically say 1 page. We're expecting X growth.
Summary, yeah.
Yeah, I think we want to summarize a lot of things because it's hard enough when you've dealt with it to deal with it. You know, when it's new to you, you don't know what page to go to, so you don't go to any. And then the other thing that I would say is that we should make sure that the 5 bullet point list is not, that's a list of jumping off point. Some of them might not make people's list, other things might. And then there should probably be a prioritization, mentally at least, for people that want versus need component of it. So people are thinking of those things as, it'd be great to have, but if I would get to pick, it'd be this one, so.
Like a ranked voting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or absolutely we have to have it, there's no question about it in my mind, and you might completely disagree with that. But everyone should have their say that what's a want, what's a need, specifically what's a need.
The other ground rule we didn't really talk about is to make this recommendation, we're gonna have to reach a consensus. And consensus might not be, I agree, I can live with. We should have some conversation at some point as we start deliberating what consensus is.
Do we have any other comments with regards to the discussion earlier?
Just glad to see the number of participants.
Yeah. Right.
And I'd like to just thank everyone that participated and hope that they are able to come back through the whole process.
Okay. I think we've got our work cut out for us. There's gonna be a lot of work that we'll have to get done in the next 2 weeks. No pressure. And I'm hoping that Joe will realize that it should not fall on just those two. If you need help, please ask. With that, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is a consideration of approval of revisions to the 2020-2021 school calendar.
And with the practice and no student Fridays, we just thought we should probably update the calendar with 3/4 of the year left yet and make it accurate, put it out there for publication. Pam does a great job on this visual. But there are a few little things, not just as simple as every Friday off. So just wanted to draw it to your attention, for instance, January, the first week in January, we come back, we extended that and extended that Christmas break to the 4th, come back on the 5th, because we do need to be in school on January 8th as the second Friday student count day. We have 2 counts per year, 3rd Friday in September, 2nd January. Yes, it's possible, but it's incredibly cumbersome. We just thought this would be the best idea to come to school that Friday. We still have a 4-day week. And then from there, it's pretty straightforward. We moved the 18th of January, and we do understand it's Martin Luther King Jr. Day. We typically take it off, but we just, in our mind, our discussion we came up with, it's better to be consistent with Fridays for families and daycare and plans like that. So that's why we moved that one Monday off to a Friday. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. Keeping the professional development days, the reds and the pinks in there on those Fridays. Obviously, we're encouraging a lot of that collaboration time. It is moved to Fridays, and we're encouraging, for instance, appointments, medical appointments, or whatever else is necessary to staff to take that on Fridays as well. That's one advantage to that. Any questions on?
How critical is actually sitting in a seat on that January 8th? My guess is the habit will be hard to break to get kids to come to school.
Just going to do a great job of communicating it. Now, just because they're not there on that day doesn't mean that they still can't get counted. There are, other things, people showing up before and after. You got to show up before and after if you happen to miss that Friday.
We might want to.
But we want the bulk of our student.
We might want to create some sort of event that makes it really cool to come on that day.
Well, we believe that our rigor and relevance and
Yeah,
relationships
I
is.
get it.
Did you want to speak?
We'll have John come back and do that.
Bagels for everyone.
Do that again.
He would give that back to you, actually.
Things, if you
They weren't ready.
if we do approve this, I think we need to communicate constantly about that Friday. You know, right away and all the way through. To put it on your calendar, put it on your calendar, put it on your calendar. And second, I know we've only had one non-student Friday, but can you speak to how it went this last week, or, you know, what the feedback is, what the feelings are?
Yeah, it went exactly, you know, as we had hoped and intended for, with this, from the staff's perspective, and haven't heard any negative feedback, not one from staff or parents or anybody. So, yeah, it was just one, but it went splendidly for the staff getting the work done that they needed to get done. So they were very appreciative, and shout outs and stuff. They thanked the board very much for that Friday, on the first Friday off, so. Yeah.
So with one in the books, it feels like the right call.
Exactly. It's obviously one piece of data. And then, yeah, you know, one question's been asked on, you know, what are the metrics for returning to a 5-day week? You know, so, you know, we do have those, and those include our staff absence rate, right? Because that's one of the driving things, is just a shortage of staff and subs. You know, for instance, we've, you know, got 3 specialists in close context elementary. So, you know, Lindsay was the keyboarding teacher majority of the day, and Shelley was the art teacher. You know, Amanda Olson was full-time in the library. So, you know, they're all hands on deck, but that's, again, not sustainable. And that's the biggest, we knew that from the beginning, the biggest, you know, potential barrier is staff being out. So we can still have students learn from home quite well, but if staff are out, then it changes things. So we did, you know, have to do that with the 8th grade, for instance, because they had over a third of our students out as close contacts and 5 teachers out. So yeah, where was I going with it?
Which day,
Yeah, all over.
which day was Martin Luther King Day?
18th of January.
And that was off and now it's not.
Correct.
Which one? Typically the third Monday in January.
I have a couple comments on this big picture. I think there is, this says to me, we're staying with the schedule. Fridays, no kids day, no matter what. When we switch the whole schedule to say that. Or we don't know what's happening, or maybe things get better, maybe they get worse. But this, to me, when you like change the whole calendar like this, now we're saying this is what we're doing. Where before I felt like it was just, this is what we were doing right now. So I think there's just that part of it, to me, seems premature, or maybe sends the wrong message. I feel strongly about having Martin Luther King Jr. Day off, if that's what we always did. I think that that's important, particularly in the political environment. So that's just a personal thing. And then also just changing those days around. I suspect people plan vacations, to have things scheduled, to do things in January and February. I mean, we didn't change spring break at all. But other than that, you know, that people would have planned things for that, and now they're not going to. That's less of a concern for me, but I'm just raising that issue. I suspect there'll be that issue.
Well, I guess my concern on the calendar, we're proposing 21 fewer days of instruction. And that's almost a month of school. Have we adjusted our curriculum such that we can account for that and teach the things that they need to know? You know, it may not necessarily seem like a big deal, but we have, you know, a lot of the testing that's coming up. The big test to me would be the seniors ACT test. And do you understand the content that is in that test? They're passed. If we don't have time to present that to them and that they can grasp those concepts, then we get penalized for that for the student. Doesn't get penalized for that because he doesn't have the opportunity to learn. But since those also feed into our state report card, then we get things again with that, because that's teaching what we need to teach. And that's my concern, that we're losing an awful lot of time. I can see that we need probably make some adjustments, but we need to make adjustments also in not only what we're teaching, but how we're teaching it, so we can get the same concepts taught. Reduced time frame.
So to Deanne's point, yeah, when we started September 1st, there's a calendar, here was a plan, we're going 5 days a week, until June 4th. Then we made a course correction. Now we're going to 4 days, and there was no necessarily expiration time on that. So that's just like, now we're just moving forward with this plan unless things change, knowing full well they can, but we just thought the whole reason behind this is just to communicate ahead of time so families can make, decisions based on it. It's probably about 10 weeks, before the first schedule change, plan for that. Yeah, that's why it's a proposal. This was the admin discussed and vetted. So yeah, the staff are assuming that this is going to continue for the rest of the year, and are planning accordingly. It just started in the beginning stages, but they know they got to get through their essential standards by the end of the year. And is face-to-face better for instruction? Yes. Does this mean they're getting 28 less days of learning? No. They're not getting necessarily direct instruction, but they're still working and learning on their own homework, knowing they're missing 20% of direct instruction for the rest of the year. So yeah, that's all known. And they're working accordingly. Can I say with 100% certainty that every student and every teacher is going to get through every essential standard? I don't think I can. I can't. I don't have a crystal ball. But they know what the ground rules are and what the time frame is and what they have to cover. And we're extending professional trust to get that done. But yeah, we're in the beginning stages of this new plan. We had the same discussion about Martin Luther King Jr. Day, but keeping that, or changing it. We do know that, students are in school on the Friday the 8th. We have to communicate, remind. And
My thought on that day was, they're coming out, why not just go 5 days that 1 week? I give them one day off,
Oh,
and then Friday.
then give them Martin Luther King Day.
And then give them
Do that swap.
but, or even, it just sounds like everybody's giving up a little bit, maybe that Friday, maybe you go 4 or 5 days that week. I don't know, it just seemed, or take that Monday and make it the Martin Luther King Monday rather than the Monday after.
I do think there's.
After that long holiday with my children.
I do think there's a political issue here about, particularly the current political environment, that it's not necessarily the right statement to not honor that particular day.
Great, that's like, well then let's just not have Christmas either, and let's not have, let's just switch all days around.
so here you're proposing, coming to school on the 4th and not on the 18th. That can be a special improvement day or a day off.
Well, whatever you have for the 4th, make that be Martin Luther King Day holiday, whatever. That's better. So is there any great advantage to announcing the whole year, or could we just say, hey, look, we're committed to do this through Christmas break, and we'll announce in December what the plan is for January and February? But I think it's sort of plan for the best and expect the worst, or expect the worst and plan for the best. I think we have to internally be prepared to have every Friday off. But if the world gets better, why shouldn't we be back at school? To Howard's point, it's 20 days of FaceTime. And I personally expect we're going to be off Fridays for the whole year. But is there any need to announce it today? Or, at this meeting or next meeting?
Jeff, that's kind of my thought as well, is, maybe we announce that this is the way it's going to go from the end of the year 2020. And then we play it by ear when we come back from Christmas break.
I think you have to announce at least a couple of months in advance, because you just can't have that uncertainty.
Yeah, if I was a betting person, I would hedge my bets on us going to school less because of the weekly meeting today. They're averaging 60 new positive cases Sacred County per day. And we had a spike of 82 over the weekend. And when we started school, it was 4. So it's trending the wrong direction. And
But that's why I wonder
and
if it's appropriate even to try to predict the rest of the year. I mean, you said when you announced this, it's like, hey, we don't know how long, we don't know if we can stay in school, so.
To me though, I don't think there's anything wrong with the schedule, if we say this is the 4-day schedule, and this is what it would look like, right? I don't know about the Martin Luther King Day one in there, that one still doesn't quite feel right to me either, but you could still kind of have the 2 calendars that you would reference depending on which one you would do, and I think it would be good to get this out in front of people, but this is what it would look like.
This
if we
is
stay
the
here for
4-day
entire
calendar,
year.
and this is the one that
Yeah,
we're
and
adopting.
from now until January, we're on this calendar, right? And then we can go to the other one if things go better, but hoping's not
Right.
I mean,
I would
I would,
publish it for the whole year. Martin Luther King Day, that's a separate question. I would publish it for the rest of the year simply because there is unlimited uncertainty right now. Make something certain. The things that change it are circumstances, but this is the way it is until a vaccine or a tremendous outbreak or whatever the circumstance is. But I think more certainty that we can plan for, put out there, and there are going to be potential triggers that change this, but I would put it, this is our expected 2021 calendar.
I think if we can hit this calendar, that's a huge win.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we're gonna hit this calendar personally.
Well, this room's full of optimism.
Well, I'm just looking at graphs, right? I
Jesus.
mean, that's not like
Ah.
optimistic, it's just looking at numbers for it, so. Like Eau Claire's the 4th hottest spot in the country, right? I mean, it's I don't see us changing before February, so, but I don't know, I think that's our plan, right? Again, and it'll probably change, and how many weeks are we in today? 7-ish, 8?
No, we're not. We're 9.
Okay.
Oh, wow. We're
Feels
But I mean,
like-
we changed our plan at 7, right? So if we think, I thought we're gonna change it again.
yeah, we're good with that.
So maybe it's just the communication of the calendar. Maybe that's to kind of bring us to a close. That's what it is, right?
Yeah,
Just
this
how-
is plan A, and now
How to
this is,
communicate.
of course,
with-
we're going plan B, and there might be a plan C and D.
Okay, then we have this proposal before us. Do we need any motion to approve it, or do we want to table it and see what happens?
Revise it.
Oh, I think you just approve
I
it
think
as
we
a
can approve it
4-day.
with the amendment of changing the 4th to a day on and the 18th to a day off, right? That was kind of the consensus of Martin Luther King, correct? Go 5 days the week back after Christmas. That was a full holiday break.
Mhm.
So that's the best week to go 5 days of the year, probably. So that would be my motion.
Second.
You're saying go 5 days the week back, so
4th
Monday.
through the 8th, all days on, 18th, and that Friday as the days off. That week.
We changed it 4 days for a whole week.
And what happened with the February 18th day? Was that just taken off because that was like an extra day, or what happened? Just like I'm going
It
back and forth
was,
trying to
yeah,
figure
we
it
had
out.
intentionally built in a longer break because there were no other
Oh,
days
because
off
February
in
was a big
February.
month,
Usually that's
yeah.
kind of a long stretch and make it a long 40 week. We thought going to 4-day weeks, we thought we'd just roll that right into the Friday.
So we have a motion, Scott, second Jeff, to approve the modifications as discussed to the school calendar. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, with that, then we move on to the core items. First is consideration of approval of a new pay scale for the 9-month health assistant position. Kim, you wanna discuss that?
Yeah, so with the opening of our lead school nurse position, when, Wendy Demling accepted that position, well, first of all, we posted it as a lead school nurse and another school nurse and did not work out. We're able to get a person for that. So then we decided to post as a health assistant, and we had 3 interviews and anyway, first person declined, second person accepted, but we had to do some negotiations, which included, which got us to this. And with that, if we negotiated that person out of respect to the other person in the same position, I'm going to raise both of them to that level. In light of our current situation, I think it's money well spent, but it does need formal board approval to create a health assistant pay difference from the para 2 position it previously was. And then if you approve that, we have a couple of folks for recommendations.
Okay. So everybody understands what we're asking. Looking to adjust pay scales for para 2 position.
So what's the change? So when I'm looking at the little table.
Like step 0, step 1.
Yeah.
So 19, yeah, that's a brand new rate for step 0. I think it's at 1787, ballparking it previously.
Okay.
And then this person with their experience would get to 20.
So we're recategorizing it and changing the rate based on the new category.
There was no rate, there was just a new category
Okay.
as health assistant.
Okay.
So moved.
We have a motion. Deanne, second Jeff, to approve the new pay scale for the 9-month health assistant position. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I have just a question on that. We've talked before when we discussed with the district office about, the 10-cent an hour raise that was almost kind of a slap in the face. And I'm wondering why we've got that here when we go from step 9 to step 10.
Because that's how every category is currently set up. Obviously with the new proposal, that would change, but that was just to mirror every other position with step 0, 1, 2 to 9, 10 plus.
Okay.
That would get changed in the new compensation
Correct.
system. This would be consistent with everybody else right now.
Okay, so this is consistent to set it up the same as everybody else has right now, but the new system coming out would tweak it.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, with that, we have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, the next item is consideration of approval of the resignation of Vicky Gersang Talapa as a level 2 paraprofessional and hiring Vicky and Jessica Haig as the 9-month health assistants.
So moved.
Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have a motion? Scott, second. Deanne, to approve the resignation of Vicky and the hiring of Vicky and Jessica as our new 9-month health assistants. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is consideration of approval of E-rate service contract agreement with CISA 11.
So for years, we've had E-rate as part of our shared services agreement, where we check that whole box. We have a number of services that we get through CISA 11. They're just changing their practice because the E-rate work starts now. In the past, they'd wait till March, we'd sign the contract and assume, but it just makes sense that they should have us come in, sign the contract before they start doing the work. So they're just changing their practice to that approval, separating it out now, thus the change, and thus bringing it to you for your consideration now.
So moved.
Second.
Who's second?
Brian.
Okay, I have a motion, Scott. Second, Brian, to approve the E-rate service contract agreement with CISA 11.
Here's ask a question on the top of it. I'm sorry to be a lawyer. This agreement entered into July 1, 2021. Should that be 2020? Or is this for the next academic year?
It is, but they're actually starting to do the work now.
I understand. Okay.
Yeah, that is correct.
All right.
Okay. Are there any other further questions? Okay. Those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next item is consideration of approval of the second reading of board policy 411.2 for the education of homeless children and youth. Okay. With that, do we have any further discussion? No, we went through the first reading at our last meeting on the 19th.
This is the one I believe there were no changes on.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion, Jeff, second, Deanne. To approve board policy 411.2, education, homeless children and youth. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is consideration of approval of the second reading of board policy 412.1, full-time student.
The only change is the first sentence, call it the student rather than he, she, to be consistent with numbers 1 through 6.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to approve board policy 412.1.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, David, second, Jeff, to approve board policy 412.1, full-time student. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is consideration of approval of the second reading of board policy 411, equal educational opportunities.
This policy, we just deleted over a half a page of things that spoke specifically about transgender. It's redundant, we have a transgender policy, and took out the name of the coordinator so that it can change or update it every time position change.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, Jeff, second, Deanne. Approve board policy 411, equal educational opportunities. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Move on to the next item. Consideration of the first reading of board policy 345.52, academic letters, yearly award.
The next four policies, Mr. Soderberg is on the call to answer any questions you have regarding these next four first readings, and Pam, where applicable, include the current policies well for comparison's sake.
Okay. I guess the first question that I had was the logic between raising the GPA qualification from a 3.33 to a 3.67. So we're going from a B plus to an A minus average to qualify for the academic letters now.
Thank you, Howard. The logic behind that was that while we want to honor students for their academic achievement, we believe that the 3.33 is a low bar, and that being displayed by just over 60% of the students hitting that minimum mark and above. And then since we've switched to standards-based, we see an increase in the percentage of students earning A's. That's up by 10%. And so while we still want to honor students for their academic achievement, it feels like a very low bar at 3.33.
Okay, I guess the other question, and I think this has probably been addressed in previous policies, that the students earn these awards will automatically be awarded them. They do not have to apply.
Correct. Nothing changes in that regard.
Okay. I remember when we originally put this policy in, way back when, the student actually had to apply for that award. And we had students that didn't apply even though they earned it, and now we're disgruntled when they found out that they qualified even for the 4-year award, but because they didn't apply, they didn't get it. So I want to make sure that we corrected that portion of the policy.
So I'm hearing this right, like, it's not exclusive enough, that's why we're changing it? Is that what I'm hearing?
Right. It's becoming an essentially irrelevant award because of the low bar. We're seeing performance in terms of letter grades go up, as I mentioned previously. And when you have well over half your student body achieving that, it becomes less of an honored award, if you will.
Are there other questions on from the board with regards to this? Okay. Are there any changes that need to be made to this policy? Or is everybody okay with it?
It won't matter, but I'll vote against that in a second. You know, just second.
You want everyone to get a participation rating?
Well, no, I just don't understand then why I'm just saying, then make the grading harder. Don't change the award. A B plus is a B plus average. That's honorable in my opinion.
Kirk, can you speak to that?
I didn't hear the question.
What's the grade inflation? Why don't we make grading harder?
Well, as Thomas Gusky says, you set a rigorous standard of achievement and then you measure them based on that. Quite honestly, I think a 3.33 is too low, even without the switch to standards-based grading. And that's my experience. That's what I think. And yes, it's gonna shrink the number of kids getting that award, but it's not in my opinion, it's not earning a B plus is not challenging enough for that award.
And the award is a pin and a letter?
Yeah, they get a letter at the end of the year.
And subsequent ones will see the pin attached to that letter.
Kurt, do you see kids being motivated to graduating or having honors or high honors?
Well, those are two separate things. I don't see kids being honored by their academic yearly awards. I think they at their senior awards night, they enjoy getting the 4-year letter winner award, which is, I would too. That's a great thing. We have, I think there's a difference between that and then the honoring students at graduation, which is the next policy. When they get their cords and their medals, that's the big one. But in general terms, I don't see them being motivated by that, by the getting an award.
The academic letter?
Pardon?
The yearly is just an academic letter, right?
Yeah, it's just an academic letter. It's as spelled out under the awards. They get in a letter and then they get a lamp of knowledge, and then another lamp of knowledge.
Okay, do we have any other questions, concerns, things that we need to address with this policy?
What do other schools do in the area?
It's all over the board.
Do you want that data? for next meeting?
Well, I mean,
Get it.
it's a few years ago now, but I remember it was a B plus when I was in school, right? And we only had 30% of the students were able to achieve that, something like that.
I'm having a hard time hearing. I don't know if you're talking to me or
or
something.
Kurt, that, I mean, from what I remember, we had a B plus is what it took to get an academic letter, and about
Okay.
30% of the classes, 30% of the class would achieve that, B plus or above. That's it. I don't know.
And we're at 60, maybe 70 now, Kurt?
We're at, depending on the class, we're at 60 to 70% of the kids would get that. But I can certainly get more data on that, more specific data if you'd like. I can ask other schools what they're doing.
How many
It's
get the years then at that? If you're saying 60 to 70, you're saying that's one class?
Yeah.
One semester or one year's worth? 60 to 70%.
Yeah, 60%. They have to do two semesters back to back to be a 3 or better in the previous model, or in the current model, I should say. And we're seeing 60% or more get that.
For the year. And then how many, in your estimation, have been, or maybe bring it next meeting, get the 4-year? Dozen out of 120 or 20 out of 120?
Get the 4-year letter winners. I'll get that. I can tell you that 58% of the class of 2019 were academic honors at graduation. 58%. It's not a small number, and I can get the details on that. On the 4-year academic letter winners.
And most of the reason for changing is alignment with standards-based assessment, rating and assessment. Is that?
I would say it's probably a stretch. I was simply referring to SPG as we saw a 10% increase in A's, a 5% increase in B's. Kids we're raising that bar. They're moving in that direction. I don't feel good about, having that award being given out to 60% of the kids from the standpoint of it loses some of its cachet, if you will, some of its value. I could certainly make the opposite argument to leave it at 3.33 and let them all have that, and that I get that, but I'm simply stating that the standards based aside, based on the current percentage. And when you throw in that we're driving kids up higher, that's a lot of kids. If everybody in your neighborhood's getting a popsicle, it doesn't seem that special. And that may be a terrible analogy, but I think we need to add some rigor to that award. If it's truly an academic achievement award, a B+, in my opinion, does not earn that end of the year award. But we certainly can leave it the way it is.
He and I are very different students. Maybe that's just something. And again, you don't need unanimous approval. I mean, I'm just giving you my opinion.
Okay. Are there changes that we want to make to this, or do we want to leave it as is?
You can change it, get more data, leave it for now, and we'll change it if we want to change it.
Mine's a bigger question on it. It doesn't even anything to do with this. I mean, if we have that much of a migration to a B+ and above, you would assume you would see ACT scores, a very strong correlation with a significant improvement in ACT scores relative to that. So that mine's a broader question when I look at that. Like, it doesn't seem to correlate in my mind. But I agree that obviously if that's what we're doing, too many people are getting that award.
Well, there's research out there that does not tie directly the performance in academic letter grades in a high school to their ACT performance. Much of ACT is about, for example, is about test taking procedures. It's about understanding how to do that. Yes, we can help kids improve, but the challenge is you've got students that take the ACT, and for example, science is really not an assessment of science knowledge. It's assessment of your ability to read a chart or a graph, which is a part of science. It's a part of math. It's a part of social studies and so on. But that there isn't a direct correlation between those two. I do believe that as we refine and do better with standards, that we should see improvement there, but there hasn't been a proven direct correlation between the two yet that I've read.
Okay. And do we wish to have this stand as approval of the first reading of this policy? And we will collect the data, bring it back to the next meeting.
Yeah, 70% of the people should achieve your highest every year like this. It doesn't make sense. But
Okay, then we will move on to the next policy, which is the first reading of board policy 345.53, academic honors system graduation.
This one is about the actual honors at graduation. So now you're looking at not the yearly honor of a academic letter, but now you're looking at their cumulative GPA. And so we're looking at, this is tied to bracketing kids in terms of highest honors and high honors, a gold cord award as opposed to silver cord. So in the class of 2020, the way it was structured at 3.33 cumulative, 47% of our graduates were considered honor grads. In 2019, 58% were considered honor grads. And in 2018, 42% were considered honor grads. And that's fine, but I'm just saying that when you have that percentage, you got to wonder about the rigor of the qualifications to be an honor grad. The reason I propose we start with the class of 2024 is because anyone else would be moving the goalposts, and we don't want to do that to kids. And so if we were to make the change, I would propose to be with the current freshman class. The other part of that is to eliminate the valedictorian, salutatorian designations. We would still determine, we could still use our class rank process for determining who would get the Higher Education Academic Excellence Scholarship, but we would not have a designated valedictorian salutatorian. The reason there is because it's been documented how valedictorian creates, it pushes kids towards trying to maintain their 4.0, be a valedictorian, maybe take less rigor, not take AP classes because of the risk. We know there's students that was their aim and they just found high school to be miserable. And so it's a better, it really, having a valedictorian really goes against what we're trying to get kids to focus on, which is their understanding what they're trying to learn, taking risks and exploring. Maybe I'm a marginal AP bio kid, but I'm going to take it to challenge myself rather than worrying about if I'm a valedictorian or not. And that's really the philosophy behind eliminating the valedictorian salutatorian.
Kurt, do you have the numbers about the grads that would have qualified as a comparison to the ones who did qualify in 18 and 19?
No, I can get that. So you want the numbers of kids that, if we were to go to this, what those numbers would look like for 2020, 2019, 2018?
Yeah, I don't know if we have to go digging for it. I just thought maybe you would run across it already. I'm okay with this change without having that data because it does seem, just based on the numbers that you gave, that again, it's not as prestigious as it deserves to be.
So is there a current policy on this? Because I didn't see that on the agenda. Do you know?
There's not. It's in the handbook, right, Kurt? It's not a board policy.
Yeah, I believe it was a handbook thing, not a board policy.
Have you seen any adverse effects with competition? You know, valedictorian, salutatorian versus maybe would this promote more potential cooperation rather than competition, or have you witnessed any of that?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, Tim, because I've had at least 3 private conversations with kids that have just felt driven to try to get the valedictorian. And quite honestly, a lot of it stems from home, being pushed at home. I know of a kid who wanted to do some tech ed classes that said he just couldn't because the expectation was that he had to take the AP courses and be a valedictorian and do everything perfect. It doesn't create a very good, a very healthy situation. It can cause division between kids. I know in the graduating class of 2019, because I'm closest to that group because I have a son in that group, that there was angst because there were students that weren't taking the most difficult classes just so they could keep that valedictorian run going. And I think that's counterintuitive to what we're trying to teach them. Just in general terms. And there have been studies that are far beyond SCC about the impacts. We're kind of late to the game on this in terms of moving away from a valedictorian.
Well, I know there has been a push. Glenn Webb was pushing for this quite a while back, which is, I think, where the policies in the handbook come about. He was pushing for going to the cum laude system versus the valedictorian, salutatorian. We haven't taken any formal action to make.
Howard, you bring up a point about the Laude system. If the board said, you know what, we want to keep the 3-3-3, then I think I still would want to get rid of valedictorian, salutatorian. I don't think it's what's best for kids, but we could go to a 3rd level and just call it honors. and they would get a white cord. But I still think increasing that rigor of that award would be a good thing.
Maybe, unlike Brian, I can't remember back to my high school.
You just try and forget.
And so I just want to so I understand conceptually, the academic letters yearly award that we were talking about, that's given based upon what your grade point is for that year.
Correct.
Now we're talking about the academic honor system, which is graduation, your cumulative grade point over 4 years.
Correct.
To me, those are two separate awards.
Correct.
I feel very fine with this proposal in a way that I didn't feel fine with the last proposal because they're completely different. So I'm just what I'm understanding them conceptually.
Okay.
Are you thinking that the yearly academic award could be, as it is now, 3.3 to 4.0, but do the honors system at graduation differently? Is that what I'm hearing?
I would be okay with that. I mean, and kind of what you're saying is you're arguing that we shouldn't have the valedictorian because we shouldn't be focusing on the numbers, et cetera. And then 3 breaths ago, the argument was, we need to make this harder. We need to make it so that it's more the exclusive, et cetera, et cetera. So that's hard for me to square.
Yeah, and I understand. I understand and I appreciate that. The valedictorian, salutatorian, it forces kids to be in direct competition with each other. And we're talking about maybe 5 to 6 kids in a class they're competing with each other, and they have been since they were little, likely. Creates a more of a negative feel. When you open it up to an honors and even if you raise the rigor, now if I get it and Tim and Howard all get honors, that's great. We're all celebrating together. And so it becomes more of a congenial relationship. And if it's the valedictorian, salutatorian, creates that tension that between kids because they're competing against each other. And I'm all for competition. But so raising the rigor, but encouraging cooperation to help more people get there, if that makes sense, that's really what we're looking for. And I think it's okay to raise the rigor and say, yeah, it's a higher bar to get to than we're used to. I think the challenge of sticking with a 3.33 at an academic award for a year is if they do that 3.33 each of their 4 years, they get a 4-year academic letter winner award. But then at graduation, they're going to be, wait a minute, I didn't get honors. So that's where those two kind of have to pair up, I think. Otherwise, I'm going to get lots of questions about, what do you mean I'm a 4-year academic letter winner with a 3.33, but now at graduation I don't get honored as an honor grad? That's just it's a little disjointed, I think. That's why I tried to match the two up.
Well, I don't have any problem, going with the academic honor system as for the graduation recognition. We've had several meetings over the years with students coming in wanting us to go to a weighted grade system because they felt that the value of an AP course or an advanced science course or mathematics course should rate more than if a student gets an A in a shop class or home economics or family consumer ed and so on and so forth. And to us, over the years, we've decided that we're not going to buy that argument because then you're placing these students that take those classes that kind of at a second class. And we figured if they could earn a grade, an A in a shop class, it should be of the same value. And they worked as hard to get that A as somebody else that was taking advanced physics. So
I agree, and I think where that becomes a problem with and why schools went to weighted is because of the valedictorian designation. If I'm standing next to a kid who took all AP classes and he's gotten honors at graduation, and I took every shop class I could take, and I'm really great at it, and I'm standing next to him as an honor student, we both win. And that's really what we're angling for.
Okay, and I would fail every shop class to the extent that we're talking about shop being the easy one here. Let's just take that on.
Shop
the
being-
equation.
shop being.
Shopping, sorry. That I would nail.
Okay, so at this point, everybody's okay with this, policy as written?
Yep.
Okay, so this will, come back, the next meeting, we'll consider this as first reading of policy 345.53. Okay, and the next policy is regarding early graduation, policy 345.61. Any questions or concerns with regards to this?
So no hours requirement or anything, so
All credits.
you have to have credit to graduate.
And 7 semesters, that's your hours.
That's what you have to.
7 semesters, so how many is that? I mean,
It's middle of your senior year, so 1 semester early. Kurt, is it,
And do you
how is
get-
it possible to graduate in 6 semesters? What classes can they take over the summer? Have you ever had that?
They'd have to double up. We left that in there as written because if there's a rare chance that might happen, if they're taking early college credits, if they're doing an online course, if they took doubled up on English. English is usually the one that keeps kids around because they need 4 years of it. But it's possible. It's not likely. I haven't seen it in my 5 years. I don't expect to see it, but that's how it was written originally. So we just left it there.
So, Kurt, I graduated, well, I left high school at Christmas, started college, but I didn't get my high school diploma until in the May with my class. So would that be early graduation or just through?
Yeah. Well, right. If you're going to be full time at the college, yes, what they would want is your transcript, and then you'd get your diploma at graduation.
I did not have a diploma, but I certainly had a transcript. But is that
As long as you-
considered early graduation?
At the time it would have been, but you had to apply now. I mean, now there's.
Right.
process.
And really, it's just a way to walk through with the student and the parents to make sure we're all on the same page and they understand what this means and they have a plan and so on. We've had this happen a few times since I've been here, and it's just been really smooth, great conversation, and they're off doing their thing, and we'll come back for graduation.
We had more trouble at the college because they said, well, have you considered tech ed? My dad was a tech ed instructor. He said, no, my son's going to college. Because they, went to college without a high school diploma. But they're not going to get their diploma until May when their class walks.
They wouldn't get their diploma until graduation when everyone else did, but we would certainly release their transcript to the college.
Used
As a
being
graduate.
full-time student.
Okay, all right.
As a graduate.
What early graduation then?
So in that case, would they still be eligible under WIAA?
No,
You would not.
They would not. They'd be
Because
out
they're
of
not a
school.
full-time student.
no, they are no longer our student. As opposed to students that are taking college courses through UW River Falls or, any number of WITC, any number of things. We have a student that goes to Welding Academy in the morning and comes in the afternoon here. He's still our student. He still is going to play baseball in the spring. That's not an early grad.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the rare student that really focuses solely on academics and very little on the social part of it. So they go on, I want to get done with this, I want to start my college career. And that's the rare case.
I stayed in because I wanted to finish basketball and baseball in the spring.
Yeah, it's in the best of
Because
your life.
I was done.
Well,
That's
I
all my
couldn't play,
requirements. I was done.
I couldn't play basketball, so that's why.
Should probably went and played college baseball instead.
And if there are no other concerns with this, then this will stand approved as first reading. We'll bring this back to the board meeting. Final approval. Okay, the next one is consideration of policy 345.6, high school graduation requirements. Yeah. I guess a couple of questions here for you, Kurt. We have been involved, I think, over the years, wondering if we need to increase required credits, such as science and math. Since we have 4 years of English required, would we not require the same of science and mathematics?
Howard, I'm not sure if you and I have spoken about this before, but that's something I've thought for a long time about. Why aren't we requiring 4 years of math and science? And it same conversation I had in Merrill. I think that's a big discussion that we would need to have. It would likely take away from, well, a couple things. We're finding that kids are getting to their required credits for graduation at the beginning of their senior year, with the exception of many of them, most of them need a fourth credit or a fourth year of English. But most of our students, and I could get the specific data, I remember a couple years ago, Jeff Fern said that 90% of our kids by credit could graduate the start of their senior year, with the exception of that one English class hanging out there. So I'm not sure it would require us to increase our credit requirements, but it certainly would add other challenges. You'd increase the number of people taking science and math courses for sure, which would be an added challenge. But in philosophy, I don't disagree with you.
Yeah, and if we had, we're requiring 8.5 credits for additional elective credits. If we put 2 of those and put those back in math and science, they'd still have to have 6.5 credits there.
Right, correct. The challenge is those 8.5 credits are tied to people and their what they're teaching and what they're passionate about. It also it opens up challenges to the students who make it through 3 years of math, but really come to school for those other things. The kids that build the bus, the kids that would rather do choir and band rather than take a fourth year of math. There's some challenges there as well. Trying to serve the needs of all kids. Certainly there are advantages from a purely academic standpoint to have students take a fourth year of math and a fourth year of science. But the drawback is they would not be taking the electives that they would want. And that includes, it might take away from a student who really wants to learn engines, or whatever. So that's a challenge.
Can I take an extra science or math class as an elective? Does that count?
Sure.
So you leave it up to the student to take that extra year.
If you hate math, you hate your fourth semester or your fourth year of math more than your third.
Well, so yeah, if you hate math, your fourth year, you're not going to apply much of what you're getting into by the time you get to your fourth year of math. Going forward, if you hate as my take on it, because you're going to go algebra 1, 2, trig, geometry first, but then trig. Like, what's the next one? Like
Pre-calc and mid-calc.
right. So I mean, like, you really need trig.
I'm not like PTSD talking about all this stuff. Grades, classes.
Okay, first reading.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, I've got some other questions on it. The other question that I had was the statement in here says minimum passing grade required for awarding of the credit. Each course constitutes a recommendation of the instructional staff with regard to the student's academic performance and eligibility for graduation. I guess when I look at that, to me, it seems like they're not really, they have to get a minimum grade to pass it, but then they are kind of at the mercy of whether the instructor recommends them for graduation or not. And I'm wondering if it shouldn't have something more objective than something subjective in nature.
Yeah, it certainly does. It sounds kind of like it could be fairly arbitrary, and that's not how it would work. But I'm not sure it's even necessary in there.
Yeah. Just delete it, right?
I just don't get what the point of that statement even is. And I didn't pick up on it when I first read through it.
To me, it's saying that the teacher doesn't have discretion. The minimum passing grade constitutes the recommendation. So the teacher doesn't get to say, I know they passed, but I'm not recommending them. That's how I
Now that
read
you
it.
say it like that, I think I agree with it like that. But without that, I saw the
The other question is, what is that minimum passing grade?
Well, because that's never changed. It's still a D is still a minimum passing grade. Now this is where the standards based and traditional letter grades bang heads, but we're obviously trying to, for example, in math, you have to have a 2.5 on every standard. And so that's already, they're up into the C's and B's. We're trying to push every kid there. A kid could still fail a class, but really the minimum still in theory is the D, but it's, we're really doing everything we can to not let that happen. And that's not to say that, well, I will say it. When I was in school, if I got a D, I just owned it. There wasn't this extra effort being put into retakes and reteach and make sure and guaranteed viable curriculum. It was, here's what I'm going to tell you, you perform it. And if it's good enough, you'll pass. But I think it was Scott that read it that way. Now that you say it that way, it takes away a teacher being given an arbitrary, well, I know you know enough to move on. You hit the minimum, but I'm not going to pass you. I think when you read it that way, it sounds like that was what they were intending.
Well, doesn't item B, the first sentence, take care of that? I mean, all required credits must be earned by completing the course with a minimum passing grade while the student was enrolled in high school grade.
Yeah, it's a good point.
It's already, I don't understand the point of that.
Yeah, unless there's some language somewhere, and it might be in a different spot that requires a teacher to give a recommendation for passing, and it might be old language, but this would get rid of personality based or vindictiveness or anything like that, and it would just mean that if you pass, you pass. It doesn't matter what the teacher thinks of you.
I think that's a fair point. To me, I think we could remove that completely from it. Tim makes a good point about that first paragraph right under B. This seems like really old language to me. The other thing I wanted you to be aware of is that the graduation requirements starting with the class of 2025 for personal financial literacy, we started that 2 years ago. So that really could be, we could take that right out of there unless it's just there for as a placeholder. But we've been doing personal finance for everybody for 2 years.
I think having it spelled out as one of the required classes, I think is important.
Yeah.
So is that what you want to recommend? Get rid of the asterisk?
I don't think it's necessary because we're doing it already.
So everybody this year, everybody graduates this year.
Would the graduating class of 2021 have it, all of them?
Oh yeah, they had it last year.
Yeah.
'Cause- Okay, then we are, 2021 to 2022 to 2023. 2023 to 2024. 2024 to 2025. 2025 to 2026. 2026 to 2027. 2027 to 2028. 2028 to 2029. 2029 to 2030. 2029 to 2031. 2031 to 2032. 2031 to 2033. 2031 to 2034. 2034 to 2035. 2035 to 2036. 2036 to 2037. 2037 to 2038. 2038 to 2039. 2039 to 2040. 2040 to 2041. 2041 to 2042. 2041 to 2043. 2041 to 2044. 2044 to 2045. 2045 to 2046. 2046 to 2047. 2047 to 2048. 2047 to 2049. 2047 to 2050. 2047 to 2051. 2047 to 2052. 2047 to 2053. 2047 to 2054. 2047 to 2055. 2047 to 2056. 2047 to 2057. 2047 to 2058. 2047 to 2059. 2047 to 2060. 2047 to 2061. 2061 are we striking the minimum passing grade requirement, paragraph after that then? Did we cover that in item B?
I think so.
Okay. Okay, are there any other changes that we need to make to this?
If you're interested, I do have the other GPA or the other credit requirements from the other middle border schools. And we are at the low end.
It doesn't surprise me.
I'm not sure it's germane to this conversation, but I do have that information if you want it at some point.
Kurt, that might be nice if you could at least just send that out to the board in an email, please, just so we've got it for reference.
Sure.
Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, is there anything else that we need to address in this policy?
I don't believe so.
Okay. With that, then it will, with the modifications, it will stand approved as the first reading. We'll bring this back for final consideration at the next board meeting. Okay, the next item on the agenda is consideration of approval to eliminate board policy 400.100, definition of a full-time student. This is the existing policy. We replaced that one.
Or 12.1 first.
Okay, move approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, Scott, second, Jeff, to approve the removal or elimination of policy 400.100. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda, reminder.
Thanks, Kurt.
Yes, thank you, Kurt.
Thank you.
Next item, on the agenda is other business. We have reminder to submit the thank yous and recognitions of nominees on our Google Doc spreadsheet. So got that. Also, there was a reminder of convention registration. If you're interested in going, it will be virtual. And we'll start. What does it say? Will be. The registration is up. The dates are the third. It'll be the third Wednesday in July or in January through that Friday. So anybody that is interested in attending that virtually, please let Pam know so she can get you registered for that. There is a discount if we get more than 4 registrations. With that, also,
Question on that.
Yeah.
Or if you're not able to make all 3 days, are you still able to attend?
You just go to, you jump into the ones you can. Because
it's,
they're
breakout
breakout sessions.
there's keynote speakers, there's breakout sessions. So it's like most conventions, you get to what you can attend.
Yeah, I just have a couple meetings I can't, I don't think I can move. I just want to make sure before I.
Yeah. So with it virtual, I wonder if you're registered, if you have access to the replay of, say there's 2 that you want to do at the same time.
I don't know.
That's what it said.
More
Did it?
applications.
It said that before. Or was that, did it say it or did they say it in the
In that
meeting?
Yeah, the regional meeting.
I think they said it in the regional meeting. So you'd be able to see the replay if you're registered.
Okay, then there's one other thing that we need to address, and that's Delegate Assembly. We need a person to attend that.
I did it last time. It is like bad news. I am not volunteering. I nominate John Yu.
Second.
I'm busy that year.
So it's an opportunity if you want to find out the guts of the Wisconsin Association of School Boards
With that
and other districts.
Isn't that an opportunity?
It's awful, you should try it.
Yeah, it's awful, it's disgusting.
So what they
Terrible.
do
You it.
is the school board submit recommendations, the Wasco board recommendations. They have a whole committee that evaluates them and says yes or no, just a positive recommendation. And then at the delegate assembly, they come up one by one, somebody advocates. And the ones that are controversial are the ones that take something away from one district and give it to another. Otherwise, you know, it's, I mean, I'm glad I did it once, but
For the most part, my experience in that, I've been to probably 10 or 15 of these things over the years, which is, it's not my favorite activity down there. It's one of those things that everybody needs to experience at least once in their school board career.
now it's gonna be remote. I don't know. It'd be odd.
But, you know, my experience has said the ones that are most controversial are the ones that sail through. Ones that should sail through without any problems are the ones that become the most controversial. And they can, some of the most controversial ones, boom, 5-10 minutes, it's done. They take a half an hour, 45 minutes, they'll amend it, and they vote on the amendments, and then they make amendments to the amendments, and then they gotta vote on those, and it's all strict Robert's Rules of Order. Got a parliamentarian that runs those, and in the end, most of the times, if the amendments have all been voted down, and then you're back to the original policy that nobody was happy with, and then it ends up either passing or failing. Oftentimes it
And
fails.
then
It sounds like we should all go.
And then at the end,
Everybody's tired.
and then there's an opportunity, if you can get a vote of 2/3 of the delegate assembly at the end of it, you can bring some policies that were rejected by the policy council or committee. They can bring it back to the floor for reconsideration.
Do we have to have a delegate?
Yes.
Yeah, we do.
Do they have to go?
That's another
Virtually?
question. But, so it's an opportunity that if you haven't experienced it, you should. No. I'm guilty of one fact that I went to one, when they got into the reconsiderations of some of these policies. And after 15 minutes, 20 minutes of arguing, after I'd already been there for 4 hours, that I'd had enough, so I got up and walked out. And the board got upset because it was probably about 1/3 or 40% of the rest of them followed me out.
Lost.
And
So
they
you
lost
became
their
the leader,
quorum.
huh?
And they lost
And
quorum.
their quorum. They had to adjourn the meeting. They were not here. But they got the message because they never did that again. So, but we need to point to the,
Do we need it today?
that,
We need it today.
no, but something that you're interested
What are
in.
the time commitments and everything?
With a sales pitch like that, how could a guy say no?
The delegate assembly,
It's
I did it
Wednesday,
twice.
it's usually Wednesday afternoon and it's usually like a 2 hour.
I was on the House Delegates for the American Bar Association, so I've sat through those meetings. And I know how people are. They're full days and you run out screaming.
no, they're not full days, because it's, they
Well,
clean.
But we won't have the privilege of coming to my room afterwards.
Yeah.
Indulge in alcoholic beverages afterwards, so relieve some of the pain. It's kind of a tradition that I started. That's President Vice Booze.
Second.
So with that, is there any other business we need to bring before the board?
I just want to bring one up that I'm hearing from a number of parents I've just heard, kind of with this, the Fridays off and all of this stuff, that this perception out there of people going out quite a bit and it's being on social media and stuff like that and seeing teachers and everybody out a lot. Like I getting more
Out
and more
at
pressure
bars.
out at bars and things like that. I'm getting more and more pressure from people, just like the perception. And and I get that it can't be regulated.
You're not talking about on Fridays during work hours.
No,
Just talking
no,
about
like, well, so there were
big gatherings
a
on
bunch
weekends.
Friday evening, right, doing a whole bunch of bar hopping and stuff like that is the last one that was brought up to me. But it's just this thing, like, if you're doing it, I get you're doing your things on your own time, but we're literally looking at bringing something forward we were just meeting about earlier tonight,
10%.
and it's not gonna help the cause at all. And I don't know how, I just wanna make you aware of it, and I don't know what you do about it exactly, but if that continues with Fridays off and everything, and right, we just put the calendar out there for, like, I don't know, that could make it put a lot of headwind into a referendum.
Yeah, and if you want to be compensated at 110% of what everyone else does, be 110% of what everyone else is.
So I'm starting to hear it a bunch.
Good conversation, right? Already notified. Couple admin, right, about that, I think. So
Yeah, well, I was
FYI.
hearing it, yeah,
Yeah.
FYI to them, this week, but then I got
Yeah.
hit this weekend a bunch because there was stuff. I don't know, I'm not friends with most, of them, but I hear a lot with kids in school and everything now, so it's, I don't know, just something to keep in mind.
Think about the message, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything else we need to cover then?
One more quick one. Howard knew this already and a couple of people, Jeff did, but I made it official today. I signed I'm not running for next term papers today, so. It'll be 18 years at the end of this one.
See what you started?
Why?
It'll be 18 years at the end of this.
He wanted to get a letter. You don't get a letter until you
Yeah,
quit.
now I found out that.
Well, it's funny because we've changed the standards on that, now it's higher, so now it's 20.
3 years.
Too many people are getting them. It's gotta be more exclusive.
2020.
You saw that, you saw the pay raise and everyone makes big money, so.
No, and frankly, the biggest drain over the last couple of years has been, I don't go on social media, I don't have a Facebook account, but I do know what's out there, and I know that everything you do is wrong to too big of a percentage of people. So someone else can take a swipe at it.
We'll recognize you later, but do you want to say that you?
But it's been fun, it's been very rewarding and kind of draining, and it's been-
Yeah, you came in at a tough time.
yeah, that was the easy part. Getting us from the front page to the back page was a lot easier than Facebook era. I don't have a Twitter account. I do, but I've never been on it. I don't have a Facebook account. I don't read any of that stuff. I don't talk to people about it. I don't take phone calls, and it's still draining. So I can't imagine. My advice to anyone that does get engaged with people a lot on it is disengage. Push them to the right person, him or the teacher or the principal or whoever, and don't take their monkey.
Yeah, that was saying of one of my old bosses, is that I had an open door policy, but if you came in with a monkey on your back, you were gonna leave with the same monkey. So. Okay, is there anything else we need to cover? Okay, then we'll go over important upcoming dates.
Motion to not have you read all of them to us.
Second.
Okay. I got overruled. Okay. Then, if everybody's aware of the upcoming dates, I don't think we have.
David?
Something there.
Move to adjourn.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
Aye. Second. Okay, we're adjourned.
Aye.
All right.
I gotta take a quick.
I was just hoping you wouldn't